Y'all, can I tell you about these Tecovas boots? I don't know if y'all know this, but these boots are handmade, high quality, stylish, and comfortable right out of the box. I know we buy everything online these days, but boots are something you really should get fitted for. And it just so happens Tecovas is based right here in Austin. So come shop with me at the Tecovas store on South Congress or the Domain. That's TECOVAS.com. Don't go gently, y'all. Today on CityCast Austin, we're talking about what's been going on over at the University of Texas. Most recently, more criminal charges were dropped against students who participated in the pro-Palestinian protests at UT in late April. But will the students still face discipline from UT? We'll get into that, staff layoffs, and an architecture assignment that became a lesson in civic engagement with my guest, KUT reporter Audrey McGlinchey. CityCast Austin is brought to you by our exclusive launch sponsor, Tecovas. It's Tuesday, July 2nd. I'm Nikki Duvon, and this is what Austin's talking about. Hello, I am here with the fantastic Audrey McGlinchey, KUT reporter covering local government and housing in Austin. She's been at it for more than a decade. More recently, though, she's been doing some fantastic UT coverage, too, breaking stories of layoffs and disciplinary letters. And I am very excited to have you here so that we can talk some smack about the shenanigans that are happening. Hello, Audrey. How are you?
Hi, Nikki. I'm good. How are you? I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I am very excited. I have to say that. And also my partner is very excited. When she found out, she was like, wait a minute, what? From KUT? I was like, that's right.
I love that. That makes me feel so nice.
Yeah, I'm getting some brownie points right now. So getting to the nitty gritty. Mm-hmm. UT is on summer break, so there's not a lot of action on the 40 acres, but do you think it's necessarily been a quiet summer over there? What's been going on?
I would say no, absolutely not. Lots of things have happened.
Yeah. UT has really been, for lack of I know I keep saying it, but it's just shenanigery. It's a lot. So let's go back to first the protests.
Yeah, so I covered both protests, both the one on April 24th and then April 29th, though I would say the one on April 29th, which was a Monday, was probably the most eventful. The university officials called on state troopers to come in and deal with, if you will, protesters. Right. That's the protest where 79 people were arrested and police used pepper spray and what are called flash grenades or flash bombs to disperse the crowd. I have covered many protests in my time as a reporter, but this was the first time I had experienced pepper spray so up close. I luckily did not get hit in the eye, but I got hit in the arm, and people around me got hit in their eyes, which if you've never experienced, I've been told is an extremely painful experience.
It is.
And then I had never experienced flash grenades. So initially when they went off, and you can see this, I was tweeting as I was covering this, I basically reported that we heard two loud bangs and I did not know what they were. It's unnerving. These are, these tools, if you will, are meant to disperse, to scare people, to get people to run away. And that's certainly what was accomplished at least in the short term. So that was, we watched police use different tools, if you will, at that protest. But yeah, I would also remind people that though it was April, it was really, really hot. There were a lot of protesters who were being tended to by medical professionals because they were overheating, they were dehydrated. So that second protest, from my vantage point, felt a lot more stressful, and like the tone had really ramped up, kind of the conflict between police and protesters, that is.
Well, and also, I just want to go back to what you just said, because I feel like it can't be overstated enough that, like, you're there and you hear two big bangs. You don't know what it is. everyone starts running. And I hate to state the obvious, but when you're in a crowd and everybody's running and there's pepper spray and there's loud bang, that's just, it feels and sounds like it's inciting chaos. Instead, it feels like it's the opposite of what they are intending to do. Like, I get it, you're trying to scare people, but you're also creating chaos in a place where it doesn't seem like it was necessary.
Absolutely. And, I don't mean to like belabor the point, and truthfully, it's not about me, but just like the way also I think in which those tactics stay within your body are really interesting. I finished reporting around 6 that night. I had no groceries. I usually go grocery shopping on Mondays. So I went to the grocery store and I was on edge. I mean, I was looking over my shoulders. Any time, like someone would drop an apple and I would like seize up. And that stayed with me for at least a couple of days. But again, that's kind of what these tools are meant to do. I had just never experienced it firsthand.
So the first protest happened. What was the amount of time between the first protest and the second protest? When was the second one?
5 days. So it was April 24th was the first one, and April 29th was the second. Yeah. Between the first and second protest, there was a lot of confusing messaging from the university. The university initially circulated a flyer that very much made it seem that students who had been arrested would not be allowed back on campus. I spoke to some of these students. They were freaking out because they still had to do finals. Yeah, they still had to do finals. They had to graduate, which is an on-campus activity. That same day, the university then essentially walked that message back several times, then saying students could come on campus for only academic reasons, and then saying they would be allowed back for any reason. And so, the students are getting these messages, this was over about a 2 or 3 hour period. And so the students are trying to figure out what they're permitted to do, while studying for finals, et cetera. So that happened. But we were told at that time that the university could and likely would seek disciplinary action, just not at this time. They were going to wait till finals and graduation were over so that students, weren't overwhelmed.
Now, here we are. We put, the students are put through this really, I'll go ahead and call it traumatic because it is traumatic thing. And then we hear, there's graduation, the students go home, and then come the letters. So can you tell us a little bit about these letters?
Students received in their inboxes around 4 p.m. on a Friday notices that basically detailed, they were being accused of violating 2 university rules, and that the university, if they were found guilty, could seek sanctions against them. This could involve anything from like written warning to suspension, academic probation, having their degrees withheld. And those notices seem to be coming out in batches. I've heard the total number is probably close to 24, but I just haven't been able to confirm that.
Wow. And do you have any idea, did you get a sense of how the students were responding to these letters? Because, this is like everything you worked for, we're going to go ahead and take that. Thanks so much. How that sounds terrifying.
So I should say, what these notices ask students to do is they ask them to respond in writing. Students have been told they will not be given in-person meetings, to sort of contest these accusations.
What?
Yeah. They're being told that there's just too many of them, that the volume is too large and they can't handle, a meeting. So the students are being asked to respond to questions, many of the questions which they argue insinuate their guilt. They ask questions such as, if you had to relive this day over again, how would you do it? If a student came to you and said their schooling was interrupted, how would you respond? So instead, students decided to write a letter, kind of describing why they attended these protests, and then also that they feel that the university has impinged on their, freedom of speech, and also that they don't feel like they're receiving a due process in these proceedings, and that they'd like to be able to meet with university officials.
Good for them.
It's a very detailed letter, with all the citations. These are academic students.
Yeah.
And the ACLU has also sent a letter to the university alleging some of the same or making some of the same points. So it still remains to be seen what action the university will take against these students. It's still kind of working its way through the bureaucratic process.
Now, is this normal? Has UT done something like this before in recent history, or?
This process is all laid out in the university's code of conduct. So it's like something that's in place if a student is alleged to have broken a rule. But this is the first that I've reported on something like this.
Are there real consequences to this, especially the ones that have now graduated?
The sanctions that UT lists on its website are things like, it could be anything as arguably small as a written reprimand to, suspension, academic probation, having your degree withheld. I should note that Harvard, a board at Harvard voted to withhold degrees from 13 students that had participated in similar protests on Harvard's campus.
What?
So these are, and some of these students are going to grad school. One of these students is going to med school. You do need a degree, a completed degree, to go to to get a degree at a higher education level. So it's unclear yet what sanctions university will seek and how that will impact students. But it's all those options are on the table.
It blows my mind that that you've worked so hard and that you are at risk of losing or not getting your degree for exercising your rights.
I mean, I will be really interested to see what, if any, sanctions university takes against students who are now under, going through this disciplinary process.
Right.
I think it will be really interesting to see what the university chooses to do in that and how it compares to actions that other universities have taken, and also what this means going forward for students who, are involved in protests that the university, has said can't take place. Because just to be clear, that is what happened. Like prior to these protests, the university told this organization they could not hold these protests. So yeah, I think that'll be interesting to follow. Yeah.
We'll get right back to this after a quick break. And we are back with Audrey talking about recent developments at the University of Texas. So we talked about how the protests affected students at UT, but there were some staff members who were part of the fallout too, right?
So I want to be clear here because we don't know for sure that it's resulting from the protests. In early June, we reported here at KUT that the university had laid off 19 to 20. I couldn't nail down the exact number, but nearly 24 employees in their central communications department. In a letter that we obtained, a vice president said this was because they wanted to focus on, quote, managing reputational issues and crises. And the letter also notes crises that the university has faced. It doesn't say what these crises are, but it's really hard to ignore the timing, right? The people it impacted, they described this as abrupt, as unexpected. The employees who were affected will work through the summer with pay. But yeah, it'll be really interesting to see who is hired to fill these positions. Yeah.
Right. And so kind of along those lines, when the students come back in the fall, one big change from last year will be the lack of not just this staff, but the DEI staff. And so can we talk a little bit about what happened there with the loss of the DEI staff?
Yeah. So SB 17, which was passed by lawmakers last year, basically bans public universities from having diversity, equity, inclusion, or DEI programs, trainings, basically anything promoting diversity, equity, inclusion. President Jay Hartzell had told once this law went into effect in January, he said he believed the university was already in compliance, but yet they went ahead and laid off additional staffers. So the university says it was 49 people. An organization representing university employees says it's closer to 62. Anyway, dozens of employees were laid off who, worked in DEI programs. I think we're still understanding and learning about the impacts of this law, but that's the way, at least, it's in part affected UT Austin.
So I feel like I went to UT on a scholarship, right? Some of it were, of course, for academic scholarship, but also part of my scholarship could be considered DEI, right? And so I know I'm not alone in that. How do you think the elimination of the DEI office is going to affect student life? And have you already seen, do you know of any effects already happening so far?
So something that another colleague of mine reported on was, funding for Spanish-only graduations. So there were students who, the university in the past had provided funding so that students whose families primarily speak Spanish could hold graduations in Spanish so that when their parents come, they can understand what's going on and they can feel included in this process. That funding was no longer available because of this law. And so students got together and raised their own funds to be able to hold this. And they were able to have it again this year. But again, because of, they had to do a lot more additional work because of this law. So that's at least, one way that it's directly impacted students.
And something that is, let's be very clear, so simple. Something so simple as like, I would like for my family to be able to understand what's happening at my graduation. I feel like they'll be feeling the results of this for a while. So, okay, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. Now, you typically cover housing in Austin.
Yes.
And these two things have, UT and housing has a lot of crossover. Specifically, most recently, a bunch of UT students came to City Hall and talked about the fact that so many dorms don't have windows. Like a ridiculous amount of students do not have windows in their dorms. Like, why don't they have windows? Like, what is happening?
When someone told me about this, I was like, come again?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
So I should be clear that the apartments have windows, but the bedrooms do not.
Right.
And actually, most of this is not university-funded housing. It's private housing that university students live in. So like on West Campus. Most students live in private housing, UT Austin. This came from an architecture professor he gives an assignment every year to his students. It's a basic drawing class. He wants them to have a sense of like dimension and how to draw a room, where the window goes, etc. And he told me, he gives this assignment was to draw the window in your bedroom. And he had some students raise their hands and said, well, I don't have a window in my bedroom. And he was like, what are you talking about? His name is Juan Miro. He was really the force behind this. But yeah, basically came out of like Austin does not have a requirement in its building code for a window. You either have to have overhead lighting or natural lighting. So at some point, someone figured this out, and it made the most sense to do this in a place like West Campus because students pay per bedroom. They don't, you are charged per bedroom. And so if they could fit more bedrooms in there, they could make more money, right? And so you can fit more bedrooms if you don't need an exterior wall. So then we had all these apartments with no windows in the bedroom. And yeah, so the city council recently they basically tweaked the building code. It really was almost as simple as changing one word. So now the windowless bedrooms that existed before this will continue to exist. They don't have to be like retrofit. I mean, they can't be retrofit. But going forward, builders have to provide a window.
Now here we are. You have all these kids in windowless bedrooms. And which I'm just still blown away about because I won't even get into that. But does it make it more affordable? Like, you know what I mean? Like, are these windowless rooms more affordable than other places? Not that that makes it any better, but...
So, yeah, that was one of the arguments I heard kind of, I guess, in maybe not support, but in defense of this is that landlords or owners at these buildings charge less for a windowless bedroom, right? It's considered an amenity. So you can pay for a window. You can pay a little extra a month.
The visceral response in my body right now of thinking of a window being an amenity infuriating.
Yeah.
Fury.
Feels, it is kind of wild. So students, but a lot of folks made the point to me, because one of the students I interviewed who lived in a windowless bedroom, she basically received discounted rent because she comes from a lower income background. So because her family makes less money, she is, granted cheaper rates at these buildings. These buildings have to set aside a certain number of bedrooms for lower income students. So one of the concerns is that, lower income students are just being put in windowless bedrooms, which raises a lot of questions about classism and what is going on there.
Exactly.
We're kind of like concentrating lower income students in these windowless bedrooms and, kind of making the statement that because your family makes less money, you don't get a window. So yeah, there were a lot of issues that people took with these windowless bedrooms.
When I heard about it, I was like, what you mean these babies don't have no windows? Like, it just made me so, I'm like, you need a window. You're stuck studying all the time.
The other point I just want to make here, one thing that I always keep in mind is what happens in student housing can happen everywhere else and could be the signal that this can happen everywhere else. Because students, oftentimes this is the first time they're signing a lease. They've lived with their parents. They've never lived on their own before. And so they are very vulnerable as tenants. They don't know what a lease should say. They don't know what rights they have. They don't know, okay, not having a window in your bedroom is not typical.
Right. I agree 110%. It feels like you're kind of priming these students to accept less and to be okay with less, which is another thing that infuriates me. So we're just going to add that to the list of all of the things. Now, KUT, your radio station, operates under UT's umbrella right on campus. And so I'm curious what it's like covering the university while working there at the same time.
It's not uncommon for an NPR station to be owned by a university or to have their license held by a university. So in our case, yes, I am a UT employee, but that means nothing when it comes to my reporting. I think we are a small newsroom, relatively small. I guess we're one of the biggest in Austin now. But we don't have a higher education reporter. The reporting that's been done on UT here at KUT has really been a team effort. And actually, in this case, it helps that we are university employees because when the protests were going on, we just walked a couple blocks over and we were there.
I think that you guys do a great job. Honestly,
Thank you. That's so nice.
It's a standard for me here in Austin. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah, I have had a great time talking to you. Actually,
thank you so much.
Thank you. It was so
nice
much
to meet you.
That's all for today here on CityCast Austin. You can find links to Audrey's reporting in our show notes. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend? Rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Austin newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye, y'all.